We also have with us Dina Meyer. And a person you may know as Jigsaw. Please welcome Tobin Bell. Hey, Tobin, how are you?
Hey, praise the Lord.
Where's Costas?
Costas will be coming down. We're just waiting for him to come down. Is he here?
He's here.
Okay, Costas Vandelar's here. There he goes. Fresh from Rome.
Yeah, fresh from that.
Okay.
Everybody, good evening. How's the crowd? Having a good weekend?
All right, so we'll get started into it. As you know, just raise your hand. We'll call on you. If you would, just stand up and ask your question. And who has the first question? Right here.
What was your favorite Saw film and why?
Who was that question directed to?
Oh, kind of general.
Oh, to anyone that's willing to answer. 4, because I have the biggest role. 3, because Angel Trap. Yeah, it's kind of dope.
I like 2 because I got up off the floor. I like 6 because I survived.
All right, right here.
What was your guys' favorite traps?
Angel Trap.
I like the traps that were most associated with karma. So a good example would be the needle trap. That it was a simple trap, but it was very clear what it was about.
I love them all. They're all brilliant.
I liked the pendulum trap because I was in Vegas for the premiere, and there was like 2,500 people in the theater. And as soon as it went, it was like ding, 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 and then it got the guy, and it faded to black. The audience went crazy. I'll never forget it. So I remember that. Plus, I made it, supposedly.
Okay, who else had one? Over here.
I was just curious if anybody, for any of you, if any of you think that Jigsaw isn't a bad guy because he's trying to, I always thought he was cool because he's trying to teach lessons, although he goes about it. A little crazy, but I like the lessons he tries to teach, and I was just curious if anyone else agreed.
I think he has a good heart and a good soul, and he teaches people to appreciate their life. And if we're lucky enough to get a second chance, then let's make a better choice next time. And I know that he got cancer, and I had a cancer scare when I was 18. And it made me completely question my entire life. And I know I pushed him over the edge. He went a little far after losing the baby, but I think the combination of both could have made him a little nuts. I don't know what he thinks about that, but I think the message is appreciate your life, and if you're lucky enough to get a second chance, then really take advantage of it.
Like with all of us, we're not all entirely good or entirely bad, and we wrestle with these things inside ourselves. And one thing I will say about him is, a lot of us complain about things all the time in this world that we live in, but do nothing. This is a man who made a choice about what to do. whether you agree with it or not. That's one of the fascinating things about the film. It's up to the viewer to make that decision, and we tried to create a character that had enough dimension so that you kind of flip-flop back and forth between what your view of him is, and that's what makes the most interesting characters and people in life. They're not all just one thing or the other, and it gives an opportunity for the viewer to think.
Okay. Who else had a question? Right here.
Okay, so as most of us know, each film was directed by different people, and this is directed at Tobin. Which of the 4 directors was your favorite to work with? James, Darren, Kevin, or David?
Well, I'd have to say Darren, and that's for a very specific reason. James had a lot on his plate. We had a very tight schedule with the first film, and he was dealing largely with Dr. Gordon and with Lee Winnell, who played photographer Adam. He didn't have to direct me a lot in terms of what I was doing. So my experience working with James wasn't as complete as it was working with Darren. The reason why I liked working with Darren was because many of the things that we talked about and worked on in Saw 2, 3, and 4 ended up on the screen. The texture and the tone and the scenes, for example, in Saw 2 between Donnie Wahlberg and me, we worked for 10 days on those scenes, and they ended up on the screen. Everything that I experienced on that stage ended up on the screen in just the rhythm and in the tone that we had worked on it. So I admire Darren in that way. I like the way he puts a film together. David Hackle is a very artistic guy. He's a scenic designer, and so I liked working with him. And but I'd have to say Darren, because I did 3 films with him, and I thought he told a pretty darn good story. And he loves horror film. He's very dedicated and devoted to horror.
Okay. Right over here.
This is for Betsy Russell. You've been out of films for a good long time. What brought you back to films?
I was sleeping with the right person. Yeah, it's true what they say in Hollywood. My fiancé was Mark Berg, and I had given up my career to raise my 2 boys, and was very happy doing that, but they were growing up, and I was engaged to Mark, and he said, you know, maybe you should go back to work. And I said, what am I going to do? I love acting. And he said, well, there is this role in Saw. It just works one day. You have a choice. You could be a nurse, or you could be something in a park with Tobin. I was like, that's a really tough choice. I think I'll be with Tobin kissing him in the park. Thank you very much. And the rest is Saw history.
Was that in 3?
That was in 3. And actually what happened in the next one, because I really thought it was going to end up on the cutting room floor. I had no confidence that it would end up in the movie. And then for the next one, they had picked 3 different sets of writers to write Saw 4. And it was sort of a lottery. Whoever wrote the best script was going to get their script chosen. And Patrick and Marcus came up to me at the party, the wrap party in Saw 3, and said, if we get picked, we want to make you a really integral character. And I was like, oh, please. So as it got down to the wire, and it looked like the other scripts were kind of falling away, and they got picked. I was super excited to get to be Tobin's ex-wife.
If for those of you who don't remember the scene that she's talking about, it's in Saw 3. It's fairly brief. They're doing surgery on my head, and there's some quick flashbacks into the park where Betsy is introduced into the story, and you see us have this moment in the park together, and then you go back to the surgery in the present time. But it's a quick flashback, but it's a good introduction.
Tobin, I had a question for you. You're very well known to television fans for your role on Seinfeld. What was it like working in that environment? A little bit opposite of Saw.
It was excellent because those guys, Kramer and Newman, they're basically kind of on the producer level with Larry David and Jerry. And so if they don't think something's working, they just change it. You know, like Kramer will say, you know, that's not funny, but you know what would be funny? If I did this. And they would just change it. And it was half-hour sitcom is not always fun to do because it's controlled by these writers who sit in offices and they shoot down changes so you never know what your lines are going to be. So, but these guys, they would do it on the spot, so it was really easy to do, and it just would get better and better. And so, for those of you who haven't seen it, I ran a record store on Bleecker Street in Greenwich Village, and Kramer and Newman think they're going to get rich going around to old people's apartments and collecting their old vinyl and then bringing it to me, and I'm going to give them slews of money for it because it's all so vintage and great. And my job is to rain on their parade. And that's fun to do when you have somebody with the energy of those two guys. So it was fabulous. It was wonderful to be part of a series like that, which I greatly admire, and I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. Okay. Who else has a question? Right here.
All right. This is like a split one. How did you prepare for the death of Jigsaw? And then how did you prepare to be the usurper of Jigsaw?
Usurper? That's some sort of apprentice-y kind of name. Or, how did I prepare for the death of Jigsaw? It was very technical, so it had to look the way it had to look. And I was dealing with Angus McFadden, who is a very accomplished actor, and so my preparation for it was simply to help try to make it look as real and as accurate. I was dealing with the death of Shawnee, so I was still there, you know, so all I really had to do was show up and let the technical guys do their work while I was dealing then with Angus, who had arrived at the room and who I wanted to play a final game with. And it was a long day, but I think it looked right when we were finished. And then I fell in love with Costas.
Well, I mean, who wouldn't? And the accent.
Yes, well, we did fall in love. How did I prepare? Your question is, how did I prepare to take over?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is that when I was first asked to join this wonderful ship that was sailing on its own, and being very successful, was not to screw anything up. And I didn't know that I was going to sort of join the gang in a more forceful way, but I just remember one night, which is one of my favorite stories, that when Tobin's character, Jigsaw, gets a hold of me and teaches me how to do it better and why am I doing this and that. Remember that scene between us that took hours and hours to film? He called me at midnight the night before. He's like, Costas, I go, who's this? Costas, it's me. I think Jigsaw's called me. This is scary, man. He goes, and I go, yeah, what's happening? He goes, what's happening? He goes, I've got an idea for tomorrow. So I went to see him, and what I learned from him was, I mean, he is the face, he's the heart of it, and that he cared about the delicate parts of change and this and that. So I remember to, now that I'm going to take some responsibility, I remember to make sure I care about bits and pieces that instead of just walking on and doing stuff. So I learned a lesson, and I fell in love that night too.
We got to work together a lot in flashbacks, in telling the story. So we developed a relationship during that period of time, which was very one of affection, and we had a good time together.
You know what?
A lot of sin. It sounds like a lot of sin going on.
You know what?
Wait, which one was that? Because I'm going to have to go brush up on my saw.
It all started.
Was that 4 or?
I think 3.
3?
When he was being operated on, you know what? When he was being operated on, I finally saw this man that's playing this character just kind of laugh off camera. Then the camera turns around on me when he's on the table, and he was doing these faces, like this crazy, funny, sexy stuff. And I couldn't get my lines out.
Like what?
They were blaming me.
Can I see? What was that? Because I wasn't there. I died in 3, so I'm just curious to see what I missed. What kind of sexy faces, Tobin? Would you make it down on the table?
I have no idea.
Some kind of hitter?
No, I have no idea. Costas has a rather twisted mind. So, I could have been doing anything and he would have thought it was sexy. I was bleeding from a head wound. Is that
Vulnerability is sexy.
I want to see some sexy faces from either one of them, don't you? I'd like to see what Costas saw Tobin doing. What was your interpretation? Tobin doesn't even have to see it, but we just want to see what you saw Tobin do.
They were like this, like. Because he was dying, of course. His lips were quivering.
I'll tell you how basic my relationship with Costas was. I think is it Saw 4 or Saw 5 that 8-minute scene is in between where you're in the chair with the gun under your chin? That's 5. All right.
5 minutes.
I also want to address Betsy's introduction into the film, but before I say anything about that. The only real, I appreciate you saying I was helpful. The only line change I ever gave Costas was in that scene with the shotgun under his chin, and we got to the end of the thing where we pushed the trigger, and the shotgun doesn't go. I'm hoping not giving anything away. The shotgun doesn't go up. And I said, Costas, what did you say after the trigger was off? Fuck you. Yeah, fuck you. He said, that's brilliant. And so that's in the movie. And I got lucky with Betsy, because...
TMI.
I mean that in a specific sense. And that specific sense meaning that when I first... When I first...
Yeah. You say lucky.
Yeah. When I first saw her doing some of the first scenes in Saw 4, I thought, wow, that's Jigsaw got lucky. Got this beautiful girlfriend, you know? I mean, they couldn't cast anybody in that part, and they cast Betsy, and she just looked magnificent. She was wearing this, like, gray suit, and this really looked fabulous, and I was like, wow.
She could wear a gray sack and still look fabulous.
That's true. Yeah.
Right?
That's right. So, I thought it was brilliant in a way to pick her because she had depth and she was beautiful, and it was, I thought it added a really great texture to the film, and to the idea of the multiplicity of John Kramer and what kind of a guy he was, and that he was more than just this one thing. He was many different things, including a connoisseur of beautiful women.
Thank you, I love it. He was so supportive, I have to say, because I hadn't acted in quite a while when I got sophomore. Well, really 3, but that was only a few minutes. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I'm calling in like all my dead relatives to help me in these scenes and stuff. And then I look up and I see Tobin, and he's like, you're doing great. And he was there for me on the days that he didn't have to work to support me, and following me around with his journal and saying, let's do this and let's do that, let's explore this, and bringing me little, I mean, I won't give it away, I've already told about it, but he's just such a giving, wonderful actor that I'm so blessed and grateful to have got to work with, as well as I didn't work with you, but we did meet.
We didn't do anything.
No.
Well, yeah, we met in the
We
makeup
didn't like each other at
trailer.
all, we just realized today that we totally had the wrong impression of each other when we met. We just thought each other were snobs. Costas is another story.
It was really funny because we didn't do anything to each other. It was what we both had going on inside, and we just sort of misinterpreted it. So I haven't seen her since the makeup trailer back in 2006. Was it 6 or I don't know, 5 or 6. And we bumped into each other because our tables are right next to each other, and I didn't even remember meeting her. Today we met each other, and she's like, oh no, we actually met in makeup, and you were kind of a bitch. And I was like, what do you mean? I don't remember being.
Nobody recognizes me. I was blonde.
Right, yeah, she had blonde hair back then, and I literally worked on that show, I think, for maybe 4 days, Saw 3. So I was kind of in and out before they even got to the meat of the movie. So she came in, I came in, I was getting the acid burn on my hand makeup done. She walked in, and I was kind of a day player. I didn't really even feel like I was part of the family at that point, because I was only working a couple of days versus these guys that were working. How long did it take to shoot Saw 3?
Well, I worked for
like 6 weeks?
Yeah,
about 6 weeks, yeah? Anyway, I was in and out, so I just was kind of keeping my head down. I'm usually a big loudmouth, as you kind of might be getting the impression, kind of loud and stupid most of the time. But it wasn't really my place there, because I was, like I said, going to be in and out, and I felt that she was going to be one of the stars, and I was sort of keeping to myself, and she took that as,
she's a bitch.
She's a snob, or a bitch. And I was like, no, I'm just feeling a little insecure right now, that's all. But it's amazing how women,
and men,
it's horrible,
take things wrong.
when we see each other, and then we're like, oh, I'm like, no, that was all me.
That's a great window into a moment.
Right?
I love it.
Yeah, same thing with signing autographs. We can be in a bad mood or just like have our boyfriend break up with us 20 minutes before we're coming to sign autographs.